Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Good evening, everyone. This is the head coach, as I say, in the old ways. Coach Griff coming to you tonight, Thursday evening, 7:30, for another live stream, and I appreciate you joining us here this evening as we get ready to take on the Michigan State Spartans in the brass spittoon game this Saturday afternoon up in East Lansing at a 3:30 kickoff, all on the Peacock channel. So remember, Peacock channel subscription base. I think it's like $5 or $6, but you can only watch it there. That's the only avenue to watch the game on Saturday. First, before we get going, I'd like to thank Bet Online, the number one online source for all things sports wagering, with the NBA season in full gear, NFL, NCAA football, as well as college basketball and hoops around the corner. Bet Online is your number one sport or place for all things statistics, up-to-date odds, parlays, exotics, all the things that you'd like to know or need to know to make an informed wager, you can find at Bet Online. Remember, head on over to betonline.ag is where you can get all that information. And also remember, if you're done with the betting, head into the casino for an action-packed game of blackjack or poker by the chance. And if you get bored with those, remember they got over 150 different slot machines that you can partake in there at the online casino. Bet Online, the game starts here. Also like to mention that Hoosier Football Tailgate is proud affiliates of a number of entities out there, including Fans Edge and Fanatics, just to name a couple of the apparel companies that are out there. Remember, you can get all that information on our link tree that you can find on our X page, Facebook, Instagram. You can find it all there. That will give you all that information under the shop icon as well, or head on over to HoosierTailgate.com for all the information you may need for the affiliates. And remember, if you purchase something from one of those affiliates using our code, we will receive some type of commission for that particular purchase. And if you do that, I thank you in advance. But now that we've got all of that out of the way, the Hoosiers go for history on Saturday as they try to achieve a 9-0 start, something they have never done in the history of Indiana football. Presently 8-0, tying many of the 1967 records that was when they were off to an 8-0 start. The last time was in 67, like we said, but now they get an opportunity to do something that they have never historically done, and that's start at 9-0, but they face a very tough challenge against Sparty on Saturday in East Lansing. It looks that as I was coming on air, it appears that Coach Cignetti has announced that Curtis Rourke will start and play Saturday at Michigan State. So there is no more question marks behind that. They have given him the clean bill of health to go play in the game. So Curtis Rourke, after a one-game absence, is back into the starting lineup for the Indiana Hoosiers. And I think something that it makes Indiana again get back into that rhythm, especially offensively with all the RPOs and things like that, that have made this offense super difficult to stop, as well as putting points on the board. Indiana, like 1 or 2 in the conference and within the top 5, I believe, in the nation when it comes to point scores, totals offense, you name it. They're in a lot of statistical categories at the top, even though they're still on the outside looking in at the playoff picture at number 13. And remember, that all is going to change as we start getting along with all the different voting that's going to start taking place after these games this weekend. The NCAA, or not the NCAA, the College Football Playoff Committee will have their first breakdown of that playoff picture on Tuesday night, I believe, is when that is released, and that will be the official snapshot in time of who are the top 12 teams that will be in the playoff hunt and the remaining top teams that will be vying for different opportunities in the bowl games and things of that magnitude. One thing that has been cleared up, some of the grand bowls, such as the Rose Bowl, have outstanding agreements that they're going to keep their slot as a landing spot for the Big Ten champion to come there and play, which is a January 1st bowl. So with that being settled this past week, I believe there are some other tie-ins. For instance, I think the Big 12 will tie into Fiesta. The SEC will tie into, I think it is the Peach. And I can't remember what the ACC would tie into, but that is the way it is looking at this moment in time. But Tuesday, we'll get a better idea of that aspect of things when it comes to that and what is all occurring in the land of playoffs and national rankings and such. And I know that there's been a very big debate this past week, especially in the media, about Indiana, specifically being that they're an undefeated team that's on the outside looking in. Joe Klatt had a very interesting take, and he basically said the AP poll is trash and throw it away because it's not really a very good indicator of where somebody may or may not stand. And his argument is that Indiana should actually be ahead of Miami of Florida. And the only reason why they're not is because Miami of Florida was ranked higher prior to the season starting than Indiana was. And therefore, that's why they've remained where they're at. I've heard some arguments about Notre Dame. And the fact that they have a blemish on their record with that loss to NIU, which was a very bad loss for Notre Dame at the time. Some feel they redeemed themselves with a big win over Texas A&M I think the very next week at Kyle Field and at Texas A&M. And the argument was how Texas A&M leapfrogged everyone and went from outside the top 12 to firmly in the top 10, only behind Notre Dame, because Notre Dame has the head-to-head on them because they beat LSU, but it was at home. So there's going to be a lot of this jockeying for position and stuff. And like I stated on Monday, the best thing for Indiana to do is control the controllables. And that is how they prepare week in, week out. Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? Because you never remain the same. And if they really want to have a firm, solidified seat at the table in the college football playoffs, you win out. And that's just the simple facts. Now, we can get into all the different dynamics of if this, if that. But again, those are things that you're going to deal with once you come to that bridge, and they'll be dealt with at the appropriate time. But Tuesday, after this week's ball games, we'll have a snapshot in time of how the College Football Playoff Committee looks at the playoff picture and in terms of everything that is the committee is considering with all this. And not many years ago, but when I was still coaching at the quote unquote Division III level at one time, I served on national committee for the national championship playoffs for Division III, which in 1AA which was called then Division II, Division III, all had championship games that were ran by the NCAA. And I was on the committee that ranked the top 32 teams in the country. And at that time, you had automatic bids that were handed out via each conference champion. And then you would have to debate on whether a conference would get 2 teams into the tourney, who had good wins, who had bad wins, strength of schedule, strength of opponent's schedule, the opponents that you play, their strength of schedule. So there's a lot of different algorithms that come into play, other than just the very black and white of it. So we'll get a better look at that on Tuesday. But the biggest thing right now is to focus in on Michigan State. And when we get to it here in a few minutes, we'll talk a little bit about what statistically are the Spartans looking like compared to Indiana for this contest on Saturday. And just one thing that has popped up in my own thought process this week, Michigan State is 3-1 at home. Their only loss was to Ohio State, but they have beaten Iowa at home and some other teams, but they kicked Iowa's you-know-what. And that game was lucky it wasn't even worse than the final score of it was, because Iowa forced Michigan State to kick 4 field goals in the first half to only have like a 12-0 lead at halftime or something to that effect. But they ultimately opened it up in the second half and pulled away. But they took Iowa outside behind the woodshed and gave a pretty good beatdown on them. And that's saying something, because Phil Parker's defense there at Iowa is one of the better defenses, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country year in, year out. And Iowa has been able to score a little bit more efficiently this year than they have in past years. But Michigan State dominated them from start to finish in a game that was just, about 4 weeks ago, maybe. And they lost this past week at Michigan in their in-state rival game. Interesting ball game. Michigan State led in every statistical category against Michigan. They rushed for more yards. They passed for more yards. They held the ball for like 10 to 12 minutes more than what Michigan did, but yet they lost that game, albeit close one. I think it was a 7-point differential to Michigan, but they just haven't played as good on the road as they have at home. When we were preparing for Maryland, we had some of the look at them against Maryland, and Michigan State went on the road and beat Maryland at Maryland fairly easily, amassing over 500 plus yards on the day. The Childs kid, who's a true sophomore that transferred with Coach Smith from Oregon State, where he played about every other third series last year, is the starter for Michigan State. We'll talk a little bit about him, my concerns, and about what he gives Michigan State offensively. But this is a team that is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde, because they play better at home than they do on the road. And they're just one of those teams that can catch fire. They can do some damage. And they're, as always, the Michigan State teams always seem to be big, strong, physical opposing offenses, similar to what you see with the Wisconsin in years past. So they've got a lot of that, and they've got a top-notch defensive coordinator in Joe Rossi, who came from Minnesota, where he had led Minnesota for the last few years into some top 10 defenses, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. But he's probably one of the top defensive coordinators throughout the country. And he leads their defense there. And the defensive line coach and special team coordinator is Mr. Chad Wilt, who was the DC or named DC at Indiana under Coach Allen, but a very well respected defensive line coach. And so there's some IU flavor in this game with a former assistant and a former player on defense that we'll talk about here in a second that has a little bit of a uniqueness to it, as well as some Old Dominion football players that have transferred from Old Dominion to Michigan State that making their impact there, just like our Old Dominion players making his impact here at Indiana. So a lot of big things on tap for tonight, but we talked about looking at statistics and doing some things there. Talk a little bit later about what I think Indiana will have to do to win this game on Saturday, and also discuss some video as well from that standpoint, what Indiana will have to defend or prepare for on both sides of the ball for Saturday, and maybe how they, look and how they can utilize what they do on both sides of the ball to be at an advantage when it comes to their overall game plan for Saturday. Also, if you're in one of the rooms where you can participate by putting in a question, comment, whatever in the comment sections of those. I know on X you can do it there, as well as Facebook and YouTube. By all means, please do. If you have a question about anything specifically, I will do my best to try to answer it. But the more that you guys can involve in this, the better from that standpoint. But I do appreciate you being a part of it, and anything that you have a question on about something from Saturday, or college playoffs or anything of that nature, by all means, feel free to put it in the chat at the bottom there with the ticker. You can see all the different spreads for this game. Indiana currently is a 7.5 point favorite. Over under of 51.5 for this ball game Saturday afternoon. And Indiana slips back in, well, not slips back, but plays a little later than they have been over the last few weeks. They play a 3:30 game on Saturday. But again, there's going to be some really good ball games on Saturday. The Penn State-Ohio State is a critical game to keep an eye on because that is a noon kickoff. If Ohio State would lose that ball game, they may or may not be effectively outside the playoffs, irregardless of what happens down the road. So that is a critical game to keep an eye on, as well as that, Ohio State right now is a 3.5 point favorite. Part of that is because Drew Aller is uncertain for that game, as he went out of this game last week at Wisconsin with a lower body injury. So we're going to look at that. Let's see here. Let's look at the Big Ten schedule from Saturday. You got Minnesota, Illinois. That'll be a good ball game. Minnesota has been playing well. Illinois went out to Oregon and found out how good Oregon is, who I think is probably playing at a caliber in similarity to Indiana in terms of productivity, efficiency, things of that nature. Northwestern, Purdue, Ohio State, Penn State, we just talked about. Indiana, Michigan State, that's a 3:30 kick. Remember, on Peacock, not on any cable or local channels. UCLA and is at Nebraska. That's got an interesting game to see how things play out there. Nebraska giving Ohio State fits last week. That's going to be an interesting dynamic. Oregon and Michigan. There's another one. Oregon is currently a 15-point favorite on that, over under 45.5 with that one. Wisconsin And Iowa is a night game in which Wisconsin is a +3. So Iowa is the favorite in that one. Nebraska, like I said earlier, is a 6.5 point favorite. And then USC and Washington tee it up out in Washington. Two West Coast teams that get to stay out on the West Coast for a change. That one should be an interesting game right now. USC is a 2.5 point favorite, over and under of 55.5. So some really good games on tap Saturday that are throughout the day that you'll find on all the different Fox stations, as well as Big Ten Network, and then of course NBC, which owns Peacock as well. So some big games there, and there are some big games in and around through the country as well this Saturday. When you think about where we're at in the season now, end of November here, within about a 3 to 4 week window, I should say, of this game being season, hard to believe, over. And it's kind of interesting that Indiana is getting a chance to maybe put the basketball season on a proverbial hold. They are going to continue. They're going to start and play here in a few weeks, or I think it's actually next weekend, if I'm not mistaken. But we're not as overly interested as much that we normally be with how well the Hoosiers have been doing. So that's kind of a nice thing to see in that respect. Let's talk a little bit about that as well. And whoops, I wanted to get to this, and I got to do something here. Talk about some statistics for this game Saturday, and I need to change some things up here. I need to go. All right. Let's look at the two offenses Saturday afternoon and what all is going to be happening in this game for Saturday with the tape right now. As you can see, points per game there, Indiana has a clear advantage over Michigan State, averaging 46.5 points. Michigan State right there at 21 points a game. Rushing yards, again, a pretty good average differential there of about 49 yards, as well as about another 60 some odd yards with the passing game. So as you can see, Indiana offensively is a team that ranks very high, not only within the Big Ten, but the country in total offense and in each category of rushing and passing. So even with Curtis Rourke missing a week, a lot of their totals pretty much stayed the same in a lot of ways. Maybe the passing dropped a little bit more than it had been, but overall, they're still being a very efficient, effective offense and still putting a lot of points on the board. Third down conversions, again, Indiana's been stellar all year at 54%. Michigan State comes in at 43%, which isn't too bad, actually better than what Washington was a week ago in terms of their overall season. So that's a statistical category to keep an eye on Saturday as well. How well is Indiana on both sides of the ball faring in terms of their third down efficiency against each other? Fourth down, again, 53-63. So Michigan State has gone for it, not as much as that would allude. Indiana has actually gone for it more by either 10 or 12 snaps over Michigan State. I would say right now, knowing Michigan State, where they're at offensively, they're probably would not go for fourth downs unless it's within a certain yardage and a certain point on the field. The big thing with Michigan State this year is they have been very turnover prone. As you can see there, 15 turnovers on the year for Michigan State. And that has been something that has plagued them all year long, from putting the ball on the turf, as well as Childs making poor decisions with the football, and something that you would suspect from a sophomore quarterback. But you can see Indiana has a big advantage in the turnover margin there, as well as points off of turnovers. Indiana, 63 points off of turnovers the defense has generated this year. That is still mind-blowing and phenomenal, because you can see it's a 40-point differential. That is crazy in that regard. And then you can see red zone touchdowns. Indiana at an 83% clip of red zone touchdowns. Michigan State only 40. This has been another factor for them as an offense. They've had success moving the football. At times between the 20s. They have struggled inside the red zone. Now they've got I think it's a Lou Groza Award nominee field goal kicker in Kim, and he's really good. And like I said, against Iowa, they got in that red zone about 4 times in the first half, and they had to settle for only 12 points, basically field goal attempts. But that is one area that they've had difficulty in as this year, when they've operated in between the 20s. They've had success, but at times when they get inside the 20, they have suffered or struggled to get touchdowns. And that's one thing that Indiana's done pretty decently, with the exception of last week when they couldn't get it in from the 1 foot line. And I thought Signetti was going to have a heart attack, and his blood pressure was pretty much over the top when that happened and occurred. So again, huge advantage for Indiana in some of those statistical categories. Third down efficiency, something to take a quick gander at during the game. So you're going to want to make that something that you peek at during the game. Again, I agree, Doc, as I hope the fans don't take this recent success for granted and get cocky. No, I don't think that many of us will, knowing the history and tradition of Indiana football, and that being something that they haven't had a whole lot of, which is anything to be overly cocky about. But going up to Michigan State is a tough place to play. Now, Indiana, the last time they went there, they won that game up there. I think it was a snowy game up at Michigan State where they hardly had any offense or defense, or any offense that day, but they found a way to win. I think it went into overtime, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll have to keep an eye on some of these statistics as we go through the game on Saturday and see what all happens and transpires with all that. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball and how everything looks here. As you can tell, defensively, Indiana's defense only giving up 11.7 points a game. Indiana has still yet to trail a game or give up any first quarter points in 8 straight weeks. Unbelievable. And as you can see there, their Michigan State's defense is giving up an average of 21 points a game, which in the grand scheme of the thing isn't really that bad considering the number of turnovers they've had this year. But again, Indiana with a big differential there. Indiana rush defense has been dynamite, 86.1. They're going to face another dynamic back this week at Michigan State. We'll talk a little bit about him. Probably not as gifted as the Coleman kid from Washington was in terms of his physicality, but not too far behind him. Michigan State's rush defense, Joe Rossi's rush defense, again, they're big, they're stout up the middle, 129.6 yards a game. They're probably similar in size and stature to what Indiana's faced the last 2 weeks with Nebraska and Washington's defensive lines. And Indiana's had pretty good success running the football, but still 129 yards, 130 yards a game they're yielding on the ground. Passing yards, Indiana 183.4. Again, really, really good. As you can see, not too far off of what Michigan State's yielding, 186.3 yards a game in the passing department. And then overall 269.70 yards for Indiana, 316 yards or 15.9 yards for Michigan State. Again, Indiana in the upper echelon in defense, but when you look at Michigan State statistics, again, not bad. I mean, when you're giving only up 315 yards a game as a defense, that's still pretty darn good. And the fact that they're only giving up 130 on the ground, again, another stellar defense that Indiana will face this Saturday with Michigan State. Third down efficiency, Indiana 33% as a defense. They have done fairly well this year in that category. They have had times where they've struggled to get off the field on third downs, but for the most part, they've done a pretty darn good job. Michigan State at 45%, as you can see there, not as good as Indiana. And so you can see some of the efficiency situations there that they faced. Indiana on fourth down, 23%. Indiana's defense has done a great job with everything when it comes to defensive football and fourth downs and some of the things that they've been able to stop each week with teams going for it on Saturday. With that, Doc's a Hawkeye fan. Okay, Doc, congratulations that you've decided to weave your way in through here to the Indiana broadcast, but we appreciate it. Again, Iowa is one of those teams that is kind of fun again this year, but we'll talk a little bit more about them as well. But when you come down to Michigan State's fourth down percentages, they're 57%. So they've been giving up teams on fourth downs. So that's something that Indiana, I guarantee it, will take advantage of if it presents itself. Takeaways. Indiana's had 5 fumbles. They've gained. Michigan State's only had 1 fumble recovery. Interceptions very similar with that, and where they've both had 9 and 8 on the year. Indiana has a very, very big advantage on takeaways that is very, very important when you get to this point in time in the year. Kevin, appreciate it. That comment. Thank you for tuning in each and every week. And I hope that you're getting value out of what we're talking about here today. Red zone touchdowns, Indiana, 56% in the red zone touchdown arena. That's pretty decent when you consider offenses would like to be somewhere between 85 or above. When you talk about red zone touchdowns, Indiana's down around 56, the defense is. And Michigan State's not bad either at 64% with their red zone defensively. So it's one of those things that, again, the statistical analysis of some of this, and when you look at key categories from on Saturday and what it all means or could mean when it comes to a game like Indiana is facing Saturday, is there are some things that Indiana has done quite well on both sides of the football. Michigan State is kind of in that middle of the pack type of situation. When Indiana, they're 8-0, so they've won at both on and off the road, where Michigan State has not had that same capability, especially on the road, where they've 3-1 at home. Their lone loss to Ohio State here a couple weeks ago, but they did beat Iowa team that I still think is a pretty decent ball club, even though overall they're more similar to Michigan State than anything. So, again, Indiana, no matter what week it is, and this goes back to the Doc's suggestion about not getting too cocky, arrogant, or getting over our skis per se, every game Indiana will play will be their next biggest game because they are the hunted and they're no longer the hunter, I should say. So it would make Michigan State's season to derail all the great publicity, interviews, things of that magnitude, to derail Indiana this week up in East Lansing if Indiana allows that to occur by not playing to their standard. So, but again, one of those teams that it's a rivalry game. This is a game that both teams have, pretty seemingly have gotten up for. And I think it's been a little bit better of a rivalry game here of late with the Brass Spittoon, but they played their big game last week, or what people would say is their most important game, the Michigan game, and they came away short on that, although they led in every statistical category from that ball game. So just a couple things there that things have got, you got to be careful of when you talk about a team like Michigan State here. All right, let's see what I can get up here next. I do want to go over their two deep here quickly, if we can. I want to try to do something here because I think it needs to be. Let's see. How does that look? Oops. I didn't mean to do it like that. Okay. Kind of got some of their two deep here. The Marsh kid, he's an actual true freshman. He's about 6'3", or maybe a little taller, but he's a true freshman. He's been a big target for them of late. So for a kid that is an actual true freshman, he's a pretty stellar player on the outside for them. Glover is a decent player, as is Foster. Those three kids are their primary receivers, but as well, they utilize at least, 5 or 6 guys in the wide receiver category. Up front, they're a mixture of talent. You can see Newman and Turner are transfers, senior transfers, as well as the Brandon Baldwin kid. And then when you look at Ramil is a freshman, as is a redshirt sophomore is Lipo. So interiorly between the left guard, center, and right guard, you've got a pretty experienced offensive line. But then when you start edging outwardly, it gets a little thinner. They have 28 transfers that John Smith brought in when he came from Oregon, a few of Oregon State kids, and like I said, Old Dominion as well. So they have a pretty good number of transfers like Indiana did in terms of their roster and how they had to kind of remake it. The tight end, Velling and Parachek, those two kids are really good. The Velling kid is probably more blocking type of tight end, run situation, 1st and 10, first and second down type of tight end. Both are fairly decent in the passing game. Velling is a kid that transferred with Coach Smith from Oregon State, so he does come from Oregon State. And Brennan Parchak kid is someone that has grown on him this year in terms of his ability. And again, big, strong kid, typical Michigan State type of body that you would expect from the Spartans there at the tight end position. They utilize them well and have done well things with them. Aiden Childs is the sophomore transfer from Oregon State. He is a very athletic, strong arm quarterback that can hurt you not only throwing it, but running the football. We'll show you some of the video later, but he is the type of quarterback that gives defensive coordinators ulcers, and they end up eating a bunch of Tums all week because he's that type of quarterback that can put a hurting on you very quickly if you're not doing the right things defensively. And because Indiana is a very attacking style defense, this is the kid that dynamically can take a little bit out of an aggressive defense because of what he can do with these legs. His backup, Tommy Schuster, is a transfer from North Dakota. He had a lot of success out there, seen minimal time at Michigan State. Childs was going to be their guy, highly sought after kid out west at Oregon State. And I've been impressed with what I've seen of him, especially when we watched him go against Maryland earlier in the year. Nate Carter is the junior transfer kid that is a really good running back, decent size and physical strength. He is similar to what we saw with Coleman, but maybe not as of a world beater that Coleman was, because he could hurt you. Big, strong kid, but Carter's not too far behind. He's been fairly consistent for them in their running game. And he's provided a pretty good week in, week out running back for what they like to do. A mixture of runs. They'll run the power game, they'll run the outside zone, inside zone, and they'll do different things on the outside zone. So you're going to see a pretty simplistic approach in the run game, but also a downhill approach. And that's one thing Indiana had a little trouble with Coleman last week. When Coleman tried to go outside, Indiana, for the most part, did a pretty good job of caging him in. When Wisconsin was downhill at Indiana, that's when he would get his yardage, or it seemed. His backup kid is also the Chiron. Lynch Adams is another good change of pace back. I don't think he's in the same category as Carter, mid-major type of kid, but not bad at all. And they will line up with a true fullback in the game when they want to create a lead blocker. So you're going to see some 12 personnel, some 11 personnel, some 10 personnel from Michigan State in different sets, some balanced sets. They'll do some unbalanced stuff as well. They'll move motion-wise, not as bad in that regard. But again, they're pretty darn good offensive football team. Yeah, I do think that Coleman is an NFL caliber running back, like we saw. Like I said, he reminded me of Howard when Howard was here. Defensively, Jalen Thompson is a beast. He's a defensive end for them. He makes a lot of plays, very physical at the point of attack. Dowse is the inside defensive tackle, another very quick, reliable inside player, strong physical kid, as is Vogel. And then Anthony Jones is the Indiana transfer that came here last year, but he transferred, I believe, from Arizona prior to that. And he came for Indiana. And when the changeover occurred, he went on up to Michigan State. He's playing a little bit more frequently now. Again, strong, physical kid, moves well, can make plays, can be over in some cases opposing. So he'll have a little idea of Indiana's offensive line, but he was only with Indiana for the last season, and then he transferred to Michigan State. Halliday's their really good linebacker. He's had 31 consecutive starts. Just a really good football player. Sound, tackles well, runs their defense, kind of is their quarterback on defense. And then Jordan Turner's another linebacker they have he's pretty darn good. Now, he is out for the first half as he got a targeting in the Michigan game last week in the fourth quarter. So he will miss the entire first half of Saturday. So I look to see the Matthews kid in there instead for Turner for that first half. But Halliday is their top dog in that regard. Secondary wise, okay, the Gross kid is probably a little bit more like your traditional outside linebacker type of player. Very similar defense to what Indiana runs in some respects. Their corners are okay. I wouldn't say they're dominant in some respects. Woods is a kid that he has a tendency to get picked on. Iowa kind of picked on him. But overall, the Malik Spencer kid is the other kid that I think is a really good football player for them defensively. And then, of course, in their special teams arena, we talked about Jonathan Kim and his Lou Groza Award nomination. And then, of course, as well as I think their punter, Eckley, is also another really good target weapon for them, as he's been able to change some field positions here and there throughout the season. So in that regard, they've been fairly good on the year with their kicking game. And again, it's been one of those things that they haven't had many injuries as well. They're a fairly healthy ball club. Again, Turner's out for the first half, but they're a little young offensively speaking, especially in their experience positions like quarterback and such. And then defense is probably, you would equate to their strength of their team. And I just think that's rather true of every team nowadays. You see a lot of the defenses being the strength of the team, although an offense may be putting up a lot of points. Just some really good football players on the side of that. For Michigan State, that seems to be their defense, with Joe Rossi, the DC there, who is a phenomenal DC. So he'll have a really good plan against Indiana, as did Tony White. But what Indiana did in the RPO game against Nebraska made that defensive coordinator wrong more than he was right. So Indiana will have to try to do things again and along that mindset. Again, having Curtis Rourke back helps tremendously in that regard. As I said earlier, if you weren't here prior to us starting tonight, Curt Cignetti did announce at his coaches show tonight that Curtis Rourke has been cleared to play and will start and play Saturday at Michigan State. So if you heard the ground shake or a loud kaboom outside, that was probably coming from Bloomington. Because I would imagine there are a lot of people that were great to hear that aspect from Coach Cignetti tonight with that. Anybody see Coach Cignetti on the Rich Eisen show? Again, a lot of publicity that Indiana is getting that they normally do not get, especially in the top tier media groups. And he's done very well. He's a great representative of Indiana. He has these quirks, but you know, he's very consistent on what he says. And he hasn't said anything to the media types that we haven't heard on numerous occasions. So, you know, he believes in what he's talking about. So let's head into the video room here tonight, and let's take a look at the Spartans, because this is a team that, again, like I said, this is their game against Iowa that they, you know, laid the hammer to a few weeks ago. Iowa offensively has been pretty decent this year at times. Their running back's really good, but this time he gets ate up. And that is not only him flexing his muscles, but number 94 as well. He's getting back there. And so it's a very good look with their defense and what they bring to the table as a unit. All right, this is a 3rd and 4. Again, they are at times, you can see here, especially in Joe Rossi, what he likes to do. This is a time where he shows a 5-man front, but he drops 3 and is going to drop 8. And Iowa was able to convert it there to their true freshman receiver. So Rossi is a schemer in what he does with a lot of stuff. Again, here's a true 4-man, 5-man front, one-on-one on the outside. That's number 4. Like I said, they did a lot against him, but again, they're down 12-0. Then there's 19-7 here. And this is the start of the third with only 10 seconds left in the third quarter. Here's another second down play action pass. Again, predominantly a 4-man rush. I would not say they are a blitz happy team. They're not a team that's going to bring a lot of 6-man pressures or 7-man for that matter. Rossi's more of a coverage team. McNamara missed the tight end here. Watch this guy at the top come flying open. Touchdown. He throws it to this guy. It's a touchdown. But again, that's kind of his forte is to play percentages and not get into situations where he's putting his defense in a situation where they have to play true man over the top. This is a good one that they're showing here. Again, this is a 4-receiver set. Michigan State, again, only going to rush 4 guys here. And you can see they're pretty much just straight rushing. They do some twisting here and there, but not much. This is a bad throw by McNamara as he is expecting his tight end to keep going. And he pulls up and he throws it right into coverage. And that was a big pick for them. One of their 8 on the year right there, which was a big no-no against Iowa. So here is a scheme play that Iowa did on the outside zone. And you can see Blackley just kind of drawing up how they're running this. And you can see them flowing, but they do a great job with the motion here, because what that does is, because Rossi will not flip guys across the coverage and stuff, it forces this corner to be the edge setter. And you're going to have somebody for him, and they're able to do one like what Blackledge says here, and they're able to pin and seal it. This is called a pin and pull, and you can kind of see what happens there. And this is 88 out the gate, 75-yard touchdown run. So they are susceptible to giving up the big play. So it's not uncustomary that they will do that sometimes. Here's just the different wide look of that same play. As you can see here, you can see them going in motion. Motion doesn't affect them because they're bumping it off, and they're not running with guys where you can kind of get them discombobulated sometimes with Indiana has done. Now, with what they're playing defensively, the one thing that Michigan State will be susceptible to is the RPOs because of how they play their defense and their coverages. But like here, like I said, they're going to get him. This corner is going to become the edge player, and Iowa does a great job on their pin pull, and their safety gets lost up in there. He fills in correctly, and that's the Spencer kid that filled in correctly on that big run. So here's some stuff with Childs. They are a big play action team, especially on first and second down. They love the play action. Get your backers up in there and throw it deep behind you. So they ran just a little wheel route here, and Michigan State doesn't run with him or get over the top. The corner peels, and I don't know what he's doing in that coverage, but they get a huge play after Iowa had pinned him inside the 10-yard line. So that was a 1st and 10 play action pass. Okay, here's one of their ways of getting the ball outside. You see Indiana run this. Again, it's a form of pin and pull. They're going to pin the edge player and kick out the next guy, as you can see here. And they do a great job of blocking it here, because how they block it, and this is how you have to block this play based upon what you're seeing here, is they're going to take the wide out, and he's going to crack on him, This guy's going to beat down there. This tackle's pulling for what we call force, the force player, and then this wide receiver has a double read. So if no one comes down, like that safety, if that safety comes down, we do what we call a 3-step read, and he would block him. But that's not occurring. If that doesn't occur and this guy bails and this guy bails, then he'll just go and block him. And then you can see what happens here. That's what occurs. And they do a great job and a great cut by the back and a big 12, almost 15-yard play there on that particular play. Again, 3rd and 12. These are the type of throws that he's gotten in trouble with this year. 3rd and 12, early in the ball game, they're bringing kind of I think, number one, they don't get lined up correctly, and so they kind of fall into this, but they're bringing some type of stunt and playing like a man robber technique, and they're spying him. And this is what you're going to see Indiana do Saturday. This guy right here is spying this guy. You're going to see Aiden Fisher probably be that guy on Saturday. What happens is he doesn't see, I think it's this guy he doesn't see, because he comes back and then he kind of undercuts the route. But yeah, that's what happens here as they get to that point, and he just throws him, right to him. So again, that's just been one of their problems this year. It has been that dynamic of things. Again, hard play action pass. Look at this throw. That is a throw, guys. Watch where he throws this. This is opposite hash, opposite sideline. This is a freaking rope. This cat has got a huge arm. Boom. I mean, that's the type of route you're going to see against Indiana Saturday. These hard play action passes get the offense, the defense up in the line of scrimmage. In that regard, probably the question is, Childs better than Raiola. He is, in the standpoint he's more mobile, and he probably does have a little bit better of an arm. He's a lot more mechanically sound in what he does. Raiola has a tendency to drop down 3/4 and a little bit all over the place, but Childs has a very, very strong arm. This is a freaking rip, and you can see their offensive line doing work in the protection game. He's got plenty of time to throw it there. So Iowa, I don't think, got home very much. They will get you on the reverse game. We've seen teams run this. Nebraska did this against Indiana, and they had shown it all year. But this is a play that we've seen before. But as you can see here, Childs is getting a block, and again, you got to be thrilled with a quarterback that's not tapping out like Anthony Richards did for the Colts. He's out there making a block on the perimeter. Okay, here's another 3rd and short type of play for them. They're going to run it with him. You miss him, you're going to, whoop. How about that move? That guy's jock is still out here on the 50 or 45-yard line. I mean, he has him dead to rights here, and he freaking 1 miss, 2 miss. So you can see he is a very slick, athletic type of guy. Always has a smile on his face in that regard. Let's see here if I can get one more here of him. Play action again. Here's another rip. Look at this throw. This is a touchdown. I mean, that's a freaking rope, guys. This cat, I'm impressed with him. I'm really impressed with him. Mechanically, he's bouncing in the pocket, compacted in his throw, and he just rifles one across the field in that regard. Do I care if my quarterback? Yeah, I want my quarterback down the field blocking if we're running a reverse. Get in the way of somebody. He doesn't have to throw the biggest block, but if he gets in the way of somebody, that's doing his part in that regard. Let's see here. I'm going to get to, whoops. Got out and, okay. Here's their Ohio State game. And this is going to have the end zone as well, which is normally how we watch things. But you can see Ohio State here, you know, they do a great job in coverage and bringing 5. And they do a good job of keeping them corralled, but then they make great tackles. They don't miss tackles like Iowa's missing. So here's what you would, this is kind of how a copy would look to the coaches. They get what we call all 22. And you get to see things from a different perspective here, in the sense that how people are aligning and things of that nature. But you could see Michigan State was, you know, a lot of play action. They love the play action team. They're a very, very gifted team when it comes to play action. Here's another 2 tights, 2 tight ends, 22 personnel. Boot type of protection. Again, good timing. And look at that. He rips this dig. I mean, Jesus Christ. This is against Ohio State, so this ain't no slouch either. You know, they do a great job of protecting. When you throw these type of routes, you got to be able to protect, and he steps in there and rips it down the field. And you get a kid like that time, and, you know, his accuracy is pretty good too. I think over the last couple of weeks, he's thrown, his completion percentage has been 63%, 73% on the year. And again, down here in the red zone, this is the thing that he does too. This is what we call a now pass. And essentially, this is what you saw Indiana run down there, but they ran it more like a triple option type of deal. He's under center. But because of the numbers and because of where this guy is, he feels like he's got an advantage. So he's going to block and get it to him now, and he's going to go away from pressure, picks up and throws it out there. He's got a quick delivery and touchdown. I mean, that's taking candy from a baby. So Indiana is going to have to be smart in their coverage schemes to not give him something that he can easily take away. Again, Ohio State physically was just better than him up front at times, and were able to get penetration. And that's what hurts good running football teams, is when you get penetration on them, it can make it, one of those things that can really hurt a team, is that type of penetration. As you can see, Ohio State's up 24-0 at this point. Just a 4-man rush. And see, this is what I'm talking about with him. This is just a stupid play by an inexperienced quarterback. You're dropping back. He calls him in. They're only going to run 4-man rush, and he's going to run a screen, and he just throws it to Ohio State. So he has made some, critical errors with the football when it comes to some of these things as an offense that you can't do in that regard. So gives you a little look there of Michigan State, what you're going to see from Indiana Saturday. Let's do a quick here of kind of the keys to what Indiana has to do. And I apologize, I got a little over myself in terms of time limit here, but Indiana Hoosiers have to do a great job containing Childs. They have to manage him all day, whether that's putting a spy on him, getting great tackles, not giving him escape lanes and things of that nature. Got to score 30 points again and hold MSU to 20 or less. Keep them right around their average, and Indiana has to score beyond Michigan State average. Another good game rushing the football for Indiana, 225. Having Curtis back, reaching 275 is a definite possibility. Weather there Saturday, sunny and 56 with very little wind, so it should be a pretty nice day. At the same time, they got to hold Michigan State under 100 yards rushing and only allow 225 passing. Sparty is a big play action passing attack, and they will they do a great job with it. Great job. Special teams continue to win that hidden yardage battle, whether it's kickoff coverage, kickoff return, punt return, however that orchestrates itself. If Miles Price can get loose, set up a score, they just got to continue to win the hidden yardage in the special teams, because that is where you can really separate yourself on a Saturday afternoon. And then, of course, as always, win the turnover battle. You can see there, Indiana is a +8. Michigan State is a -7 on the year. So you can understand why this football team that they're playing Saturday is right around that 500 level. It's because they've not done a great job inside the 20. They haven't done a great job in terms of taking care of the football with costly turnovers. And then again, they've had trouble at times being overly efficient on third down. So a very commonality of a youthful football team that also has some talent with this child's kid. So it's going to be a big barn burner up there Saturday afternoon for the brass spittoon. Indiana owes Sparty one from last year, but I hope everything is up on the raring to go Saturday afternoon at 3:30. Remember, Peacock will have the broadcast of that ball game Saturday. We'll keep abreast of what's happening over in Nittany Lion Land at Beaver Stadium, as that game will kick at noon. I thank you for joining me here again this evening. Those of you that were able to participate in the chat room, again, thank you for your patronage and joining me each and every week on these lives. Greatly appreciate it. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. You've been watching the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on Believe.